Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
Accused of a crime they didn't commit, a ragtag band of fugitives fights a covert battle to clear their names and expose the insidious enemy that is Cobra. Some call them outlaws. Some call them heroes. But these determined men and women think of themselves only as ordinary Joes. And this is their story.
All right, Ed, you ready to get started on this G.I. Joe?
Finally.
Dude, that was my attitude for... I was taking a look at how long. I was like, man, it's been a minute since we did a pilot's license. The last one we did was back in November for the Kevin Conroy tribute. We did, Batman Mask of Phantasm. Great episode. And that was... I mean, not that we needed an excuse to do a Kevin Conroy or Mask of Phantasm episode, but I do remember thinking, let's do this instead of G.I. Joe Renegades. Because we talked about doing G.I. Joe Renegades back in the Harley Quinn episode. And I don't know if you remember this, but dude, you're the reason why we're doing G.I. Joe Renegades.
To be fair.
And I've got the sound clip pulled up.
Here's the deal about this.
Hit it.
I thought I was recommending G.I. Joe Resolute, which was the Warren Ellis, penned G.I. Joe, which is pretty cool. Like, they were, I think, 15, 20-minute episodes.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I like this art.
And the art style is really
that's
sweet.
Badass.
That's what I thought I was recommending, to be fair. But I misspoke.
Yeah, you did.
And this was like... I looked at it once we picked that because I didn't remember. Remember, you said you picked this. It's like, what? I didn't pick this. So I thought I was picking Resolute.
I gotcha. That makes sense.
Renegades, because I think I got the years mixed up. I was like, oh, that's probably the last thing that came out because I think it's the last animated thing that came out for G.I. Joe. But yeah, I was trying what I meant. Caveat. What I meant was the Warren Ellis
Renegades. Okay. Oh, Resolute. Gotcha. Okay, that's fair enough. Because when you look back, when you hear,
still shocked at one.
When you listen, yeah, exactly. When you listen back to the episode, Ashley chose X-Men Evolutions because that's a personal favorite. I chose Static Shock because I was like, it's about time. If we're going to continue on this DC train, I thought that would have been a good next one. And at first, you were like, "Oh, come back to me."
Yeah.
And then right before I wrapped up the episode, you were like, "Oh, G.I. Joe Renegades."
And I was like, "Oh, wrong one." Shit.
All good. I will say this. Surprisingly, I like this way more than I thought. Like, had I known the quality was going to be actually pretty decent, we would have knocked this episode out months ago.
Yeah, no one wanted to do this. It was like,
no, Ashley didn't want to do this.
Ashley had a child to avoid doing this. She had a baby to not do this.
She'd rather bring new life into this world than talk about G.I. Joe. But she's missing out, is what I'll say. All right, Shortbox patrons, I'd like to welcome you to the... Actually, what am I doing? I got to hit them with the yo. Yo! Shortbox patrons, I'd like to welcome you to the 15th episode of our spin-off podcast series, Pilot's License. It's a series that finds us revisiting the best comic book cartoons and animated shows every Wednesday. Today, we'll be spotlighting the Hasbro Studios cartoon G.I. Joe Renegades, as selected by you and the rest of the Patreon community. Well, maybe not you specifically, but you know who you are. If you voted for this cartoon...
It won by a good amount, though.
And I'll share the poll results here in a second. But it definitely was a surprising winner. And you know who you are if you voted for this one, right? Like I like to say, Pilot's License, it's not a free show. So if you're hearing this when it drops, that means you are a member of our Patreon community. And you guys are the best supporters we could ask for. So thank you for giving us your money so we could do episodes and bonus projects like this. This is what your $5 a month pays for us to talk about cartoons that we are reluctant wanting to watch. But regardless, your support does mean the world to us. As you guys know by now, my name is Botter, and joining me on my left, but he's my right-hand man today, is the special Edmund Danzart.
Yo.
What's up, Ed?
What's up?
And a big shout-outs to our in-studio audience today, which is of just one today, all right? We're trying out something new. We're inviting you guys to hang out in the chat while we record these episodes. So big shout-outs to our guy, Mac J, a.k.a. Flursley, here on the chat hanging out with us. Do you know how he got the name Flursley? Remember when we did the Christmas episode and we got an email from Mac? Cesar was reading it. And he started his email Flursley, and he was like, was he drunk when he wrote this shit?
That's hilarious.
It's a good nickname. I'll give him that. All right, patrons, as you might recall, all you eagle-eared listeners, or all you diehard Shortbox fans that know the numbers like I do, it's been a couple months since we did the last installment of Pilot's License. Our last episode was a tribute to Kevin Conroy. It was that deep dive that we did into one of the best Batman movies of all time, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which was a really fun episode and awesome as always to learn something new along with Ashley. It was her first time watching it. And it was a good episode, right? So if you're new to the Patreon or this is your first foray into Pilot's License, make sure you go back and check out that episode as well as the other 14 episodes in the series in total. And you might be asking yourselves, how do we jump from the DC animated universe to G.I. Joe? Surprisingly, G.I. Joe Renegades won 64% of the votes, all right?
Crazy.
I'm not going to say it's a landslide, but it was a very strong win. It beat out Static Shock and X-Men Evolutions. I think Static Shock was won second place.
And we were doing like early 2000s type of thing, like as far as era. Was that part of the criteria?
I think we were just, I think I had just asked for just any recommendations. How would you say this show compares or differs to other animated shows that we've discussed so far? Like I said, this is our 15th Pilot's License episode. How does it compare to some of the other stuff we've watched?
Well, it's definitely almost completely different genre. It's like a military-based
espionage type
fiction, whereas we've been primarily doing superheroes, and I guess Gargoyles would be more like a supernatural type of show. So it's thematically it's different. Trying to think of what we watched. Have we?
Yeah, I'll give you the list right here. We have done in this just working backwards: Mask of Phantasm, Harley Quinn, Young Justice, X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, Gargoyles, Spawn, Silver Surfer, TMNT, the original 89 cartoon, the Max Batman animated series, and Spider-Man Unlimited.
Yeah, it's like this is non-superhero. That's like the biggest difference.
Yeah, I think this is the most...
in the military kind of aspect to it.
More on the espionage side, like you said, militaristic, centered show. I think it's probably the most grounded show too. You're not dealing with any superheroes or anyone with powers at that. They're depowered. They're the most depowered group of heroes we've talked about. Like strictly your ordinary average Joes in comparison to some of those names. So before we get started on the, getting into our deep dive and going from there, I do want to set the table for anyone tuning in that was like me prior to this episode that had no idea what the hell G.I. Joe Renegades was about. Here's some background for those of you unfamiliar with the show. G.I. Joe Renegades is obviously based on the iconic toy line by Hasbro, but it also pulls from some of the lore introduced in the iconic comic series G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, done by the legendary Larry Hama. G.I. Joe Renegades was originally aired on the Hub Network, which was a joint TV partnership between Hasbro and Discovery Channel to relaunch the Discovery Kids Network with all new original content based on Hasbro's IPs. G.I. Joe Renegades was among the first shows launched on that new network. It ran for 1 season in total, but it had 26 total episodes, so pretty long season 1. It ran from November 26, 2010 to July 23rd, 2011. You can watch all 26 episodes free on Tubi TV, which is, I kind of like that platform.
Tubi's pretty good.
It's got a lot of good stuff on there.
There's also if you don't want to feel like downloading the free app, YouTube, there's an official G.I. Joe channel with pretty much all the stuff on there.
Really?
In good quality, yeah.
I love me a good free cartoon YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the plot for G.I. Joe Renegades is pretty straightforward, and it's mentioned every episode during the opening. And
the A-Team.
Yeah.
They do the same narration.
Yep. And the narration in this case is done by the incredible voice acting talent of David Kaye, a.k.a. the voice of Megatron, Professor X, and Clank from the Ratchet & Clank video game series. You probably heard the opening narration at the start of this episode, but the plot goes a little something like this. Accused of a crime they didn't commit, a ragtag band of fugitives fights a covert battle to clear their names and expose the insidious enemy that is Cobra. Some call them outlaws, some call them heroes, but these determined men and women think of themselves only as ordinary Joes, and this is their story. The show's cast obviously features some familiar and landmark characters from the franchise like Duke, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Roadblock, Tunnel Rat, Flint, Lady J, Baroness, Dr. Mindbender with the sweet popped collar like he was a prep school kid. And of course,
hated that redesign.
Cobra Commander. Yeah, terrible redesign. The series was developed by Henry Gilroy, who's best known for co-creating Star Wars Clone Wars animated series, as well as Martin Elliott Eisenberg, who worked on Beast Machines, Transformers Animated, and you've also got Jeff Klin as to round out the trio, who worked on shows like Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot, Godzilla animated show, and fellow Hub Network cartoon Transformers Prime. Now, before we begin talking about these non-ordinary Joes and our favorite episodes, I do encourage you to check out the show for yourself if your interest is piqued so far. Like I said a few minutes ago, I was pleasantly surprised how much I kind of enjoyed this cartoon. It was nowhere near as bad as I was making it out in my head. We should have knocked this episode out months ago, but here we are, and I think it's worth your time if you're even a high-level fan of G.I. Joe. Like I said, all 26 episodes are available to watch for free on Tubi TV, or if you want to play it safe in case Tubi goes down one day or decides to take all those episodes.
Start charging you?
Yeah. You can purchase the entire first season on Amazon Prime Video for like $35, or if you're someone that likes physical media, you can get the Blu-ray for a whopping $75 and up. I think it's one of those, I think a few elements, it's a fan, it's an IP that is well beloved. And I think it's one of those it's a 1 season show. I don't think they made a lot of Blu-ray DVDs. So that might cost you a little pretty penny. Ed, do you remember your first conscious exposure to the show? Or were you kind of like me where when
I started watching it for this episode?
You're like last night.
Because I picked the wrong thing. So I pulled it up and I'm like, what is this? I watched several because I don't like using the word hate so much, but I hate the character design in this show. I do not. There's so many pairs of cargo pants in this. Everyone's pointy and weird looking. And
do you know what it reminds me
of?
It reminds me of early 2000s cartoons that still made like that animation style, such as like Jackie Chan Adventures and X-Men Evolutions. Like it's made its way into 2010. Like they were still pulling from that.
And it's so boring. It's just so plain. And behind the scenes, it's the character designer is one of my favorite artists, which is really throws me aback. So the guy who's the lead designer is Shane Glines, who's done so much work for DC. He's the lead designer on the Harley Quinn series.
Oh wow!
He's done stuff for Batman Beyond. He's like I said, he's worked with. His style is kind of in that Darwin Cook, Bruce Timm style. I've got books.
I would not have pulled that.
Yeah, I got art books. I got art books of his pinup stuff.
Wow.
He did. He was the lead designer on the Gods and Monsters, which we did a episode watch along back in the day.
Yes, we did.
So Static Shock he worked on. Beware the Batman.
So this dude's a veteran. He's a veteran when it comes to being a cartoonist.
And he's a legit. He's a guy that can draw. And he's like I said, he's one of my favorite artists when he does stuff away from superhero stuff, but he's kind of been entrenched in the DC animated world for a while. He even did costume designs for Birds of Prey.
Oh, wow.
Live action. So
okay.
Legit dude. And this is like,
they were like, we don't have the budget. What can we get for $10 an hour?
Yeah, it's like, can you make this more boring and plain? I don't know if this was
it's kind of plain. Just
like we need it easier to animate. The characters don't look heroic to me. They look kind of, except for Roadblock. Roadblock, those are sweet mutton chop sideburns he has, but they're so scrawny. Even like Storm Shadow looks like a skinny weirdo. You know, it's like beyond that. Once you can get past, at least for me, get past how ugly this show is. It gets better and better. Like the first couple episodes, I was like, "Oh, this is not good." But I figured, okay, there's a Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes retelling. Okay, I like those are my favorite G.I. Joe characters.
Yeah,
and then I watched the 2-part final.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I want to hear about your episodes in depth, but I want to take a step back real quick and ask. Like, has G.I. Joe ever been your jam? Maybe as a kid, was G.I. Joe like on your radar? The Larry Hama
totally.
comics?
The comics I got a ton of from the nickel boxes. So I had a ton of Larry comics.
End scene, and that's the end of your preview for today's Shortbox Nation. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you want the rest of the episode or even more bonus content from us to hold you over on weeks like this, consider joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/theshortbox. Or if you got your phone in your hand, go ahead and do a little scrolling. Hit the support this show button from this episode show notes. I promise you won't have to scroll too far. We'll be posting 2 episode polls on our Patreon this month. So if you want to say in the next comic cartoon that we talk about or other topics we cover for future episodes, you know what to do by now. Sign up for a reward tier and come join the rest of the Shortbox community and be treated like royalty, all right? You're getting way more than what you pay for. Whether you join the $2 tier or the $5 tier, I guarantee you it's worth the investment. And you'll have our undying gratitude, all right? We'd really appreciate the support. Until next time, take care of yourselves, go read some comics, and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. I'll catch you next week. Peace.